So let's take a closer look at the Judiciary in Focus. Joining me on the news at 10 is the former president of the Commonwealth Lawyers Association, Boma Alabi. Thank you for coming on the news at 10.
Thank you very much.
So you saw that report just before the break. Would you say that that third arm of government, the judiciary, is the weakest link when you look at the other arms of the relationship with the other arms of government?
Far from it. Weakest link, that is actually the foundation and the one arm of government that has performed, delivered for the Nigerian citizen consistently in all these 58 years. We've had coups, we've had all sorts of changes in the executive arm, where we've had autocracy, we're now going back to a democracy, but they're far away from the people, as is the legislative arm of government. The judiciary is the one arm that is actually there for every Nigerian.
Let's look at the reforms. In the last 10 years, a number of them have been introduced, from digitization and many others. But how well can we actually say that the Nigerian citizen has easy access to justice, or can even get what justice should be?
In the circumstances, and remember again, of the three arms, the judiciary is the least funded of the three, whilst being the most important of the three. That arm of government is doing pretty well with the little resources it has. The Supreme Court has gone digital. I practice mainly in Lagos and Oyo State, and in those states, the reforms have made it so much easier for citizens to access justice fairly speedily. Obviously, there's a lot more to be done, which is outside of the judiciary. It requires a holistic look at the whole justice system.
It's almost as if you're saying between a 1 to 10, the judiciary is looking good at 8.
In the circumstances, with the limited resources they have, absolutely. Our judges are heroes. I wouldn't be a judge. And I say that without, because the circumstances under which they work is appalling. You go to court, you see it. It's just, and regardless, they carry on. So we need to be celebrating the judiciary at this point in time, rather than criticizing and vilifying, and looking at how to support them to do better for the Nigerian citizens.
You mentioned funding. Insufficient funds, or perhaps, inadequate, pretty much the same thing in running the judiciary. It's been an issue. Do you think it has made them less independent?
I think that despite the insufficiency of funds, the judges are independent. I can tell you from my practice here that my cases are predictable, which means that they follow the law. You can expect an outcome, and that's what you generally get. So they are independent. The facilities, I keep saying it, it's appalling. Nigerians should, maybe you go to the courts, but you tend to film from the outside. The higher courts are better off, but even then, you cannot compare it to the National Assembly facilities, for instance, or the State Assembly facilities, or the palaces that the executive lives in and works from.
But there's still the perspective that we have the executive that somewhat controls what happens in the judiciary by the several appointments that they make in their relevant positions, and perhaps this affects the total independence.
The appointment process could be better, it can be improved, as with all things, but that is not within the control of the executive. It is within the control of the judiciary itself. Nominations are made, the criteria that have to be met. It's highly competitive because quite a number of lawyers want to serve on the bench, and there are limited numbers. So I'm not aware that the executive influences the appointment of judges to that extent. Certainly, in terms of seniority or appointing the administrative head of court, yes, there's more engagement with that arm of government.
Finally, on the issue of housekeeping within the judiciary, how much more do we still need to do, especially if we want justice delivery, looking at the bar and then the bench?
Oh gosh, that's why I talked about a holistic approach, because there are several moving parts to getting it all right and all the ducks in a row to achieve speedy delivery of justice. So it's not just the judiciary, it is also the lawyers who are practicing in the courts, it is the jurisprudence that has developed in this jurisdiction over the years. All of these things are, acting as a clog in the will of justice.
You've acted as, former president of the Commonwealth Lawyers Association.
Yes.
I mean, compare this, what's happening in Nigeria.
Precisely, that's why I said it's the jurisprudence, because we didn't invent the common law. And yet, in England, you will start and finish a case within 6 months to a year, maximum. You have a window where you go for trial. You say it's 5 days and it's 5 days. You start, you finish. That happened because certain things were taken out of the courtroom into the registry. So all these housekeeping things that we currently deal with in the courtrooms in Nigeria are dealt with in the registry. And that's what must happen for us to move ahead, because we're spending too much time litigating the margins rather than getting to the substance of the issues.
All right, Umar Alabi, thank you so much for joining us on the News at 10.
You're welcome.